Weird science
is the revolution.
Jay Garrick, The Flash, number 4, written by Jeremy Adams with art by Diego Ortolagui.
Oh, yeah.
I every time I'm like, I think Eric did, and then I see that name, I'm like, nope, I do it every time. Colors by Luis Guerrero and letters by Steve Wands. You know, I don't have a song for Steve Wands. This ends up being pretty much a retcon of the origin of Jay Garrick, but also Judy. We have that all in here. I talked to Eric. I know that sometimes these sort of things you don't dig because they change things. I'm maybe guessing that the idea of a metagene does that upset you? The idea that it plays that?
We have Jay Garrick who gets his, Speed Force powers. I'm saying Speed Force with almost air quotes because for how it works out, but he gets his powers from hard water vapor that was inhaled during his whole thing. You have a lot of cool stuff in here where you reenact a lot of that. You even have pages reenacted from the original Flash comics #1 with that whole thing, and then it continues on with stuff you never saw behind the scenes about how, Dr. Elemental, Professor Hughes, is actually the bad guy and all this because he was in that original comic as well. That stuff's all cool, but the idea that the hard water vapor, it's always been a silly thing, especially when you have Barry Allen and the Speed Force.
You mentioned it when this started.
Exactly. And I'm like, but it's a weird situation that his whole thing is, I want to be able to activate people's metagenes or just see if I can give them powers because one day he saw Green Lantern Alan Scott doing shit in 1938. I'm like, maybe that I can make a man into something just like that who's not like a god or something magical along those lines. And he chooses Jay Garrick because he's kind of a schlub on the football field. I want to be able to make this guy better. When we do this whole thing and you make Jay Garrick a metahuman while activated because he inhaled some hard water vapor, then later on saying, well, you know what, I gave him his power because he had a metagene that I activated this whole thing. So I'm going to go and make Judy Garrick a metahuman as well by making her drown to activate her metagene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
it
just
hard
feels
water.
Weird. It's a hard water formula, but it looks like I know he says it, but it looks like he just bursts a pipe. It's just her in water. It's not even hard water vapor. She's drowning.
He had that. He could either do that or get her hooked on cigarettes so that she'd smoke it up in the lab. And he didn't want to do that. That would be very evil.
Which is great because that was in the first issue as well. I was actually shocked
awesome.
that they had him still smoking in this whole retconned era of this whole thing. I'm like,
Here's the thing: when they do that, and Dr. Hughes is like, well, what's the guy doing? He's lighting up like what an idiot. I thought that was hilarious because when we even read it, most people when they read it, it does feel like, what's he doing? And then Jay himself's like, hey, I'm training on the football field, but I love to smoke it up, boys. And it made me giggle.
Even though I'm training for football right now, it would taste great to have a cigarette.
Okay. Yeah, after a long day at the lab. I'm telling you, not quite there yet, but this does have that Jeff Johns feel of going back.
But that's the thing is, it's going back and doing stuff actually opposed to Jeff Johns, though. But a lot of people hate it. For when we had
that's opposed for the deal, but I like how he sets up things up. You're seeing the other things that happen.
That's cool as well. But I'm saying the idea that a lot of people hated was from Flash Rebirth, where it seemed that when Barry was struck by the lightning and doused in the chemicals, he is the one that created the Speed Force at that time, and it's spread out throughout the timeline, actually giving Jay the access to the Speed Force in the past, even though he's supposed to be the first Flash and stuff along those lines. But now saying, oh no, it's not the Speed Force, it's just the metagene, feels weird.
I think that the metagene thing, and that's where I knew when I was reading, I'm like, I don't know, Eric might not like this, but what I thought in this were Jeremy Adams, and I think that he's thinking this through a bit, where it's more for Judy than actually Jay, because you have to have, how did Judy get the Flash? Because it's not some Speed Force, they didnn't pass it on at that way at this point. So you have to have some way. And what he did pass on.
Access to the Speed Force feels weird, though, just being a metagene.
But he did end up, and it's a latent gene. You almost get Terrigen Mist here. You're playing that idea that Jay did pass on the metagene that is activated by the chemicals, the hard water. That doesn't really play out later because they end up doing the different thing. But I like it in this book to show
why couldn't he have just passed on the power through birth?
Yeah, I think that it's because of how Jay got it that it wouldn't be something that would be genetic in a way of a power. I think that's the only way they're doing it, and maybe because I don't know, Joan. I think that he's playing with the idea that it's something that he ended up in a lab, he got hit, and that's not something you'd pass on. That's just something that happened to you, and that's where he's going with. Yeah, but again, that's later. That's not what he's doing, and I think that he just wanted to show you how you do all of this and how it works. Again, though, they kind of go about it a different way anyway because Barry created the thing. It's all wonky, but I thought it worked okay in this with the idea that it just activates it. That's why she has it. But that's just to get them the Speed Force. That ends up not really being that
We're not
big
even
a
the
deal
Speed
to
Force
me.
in my mind. It's just a metahuman gene now.
Well, that's why, again, it's still a metagene that can tap into the Speed Force, it seems. I don't know. He's going with just, hey, look, this is how he was able to pass it on, and wants to have an origin story that Dr. Elemental now has given both of them their origins. He was the one who created
and not only
both
that,
of them.
but also after Judy Garrick was disappeared from everything that happened timeline wise, where she disappeared from the timeline, he then also went on to make sure that he could have all the super science that he needed and helped co-found Star Labs with Dr. Slate. So now he is a silent partner who's created all the Star Labs for the past 80 years.
Yeah, and Star Labs does get a little shady at points. So you go, but there's a lot here. He's changing, but I don't feel like it's changes that would get people that angry. I don't think it really changes that much. And really, if this book just disappears, we'll never even care about it. We won't think about it later anyway. But I do like the play. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll probably laugh if this book just goes away and 2 years from now, Star Labs comes up and like, hey, do you know that Dr. Element? But
even the idea of the book going away, because it will, because it's a 6-issue mini, but I expect Judy Garrick to be here to stay.
Yeah, go. But I don't know. Where would she pop up? I don't know. We could easily have these characters just disappear again. I hope they don't, because I like them. But I don't know. If the JSA book itself doesn't continue, then these all might
young JSA
just leave. Maybe not see them anymore. But we'll see. But I like the way that he twists some of the things where the lab table that originally, hey, I'm going to smoke. Oh, no, everything. There's actual, hydraulics underneath.
Well, that's
I like
the thing.
that you see the hydraulics and made me laugh so much.
It's seen before that, when Jay in the original Flash comes, I'm going to light up and I'm going to lean against this lab table right here. And then he just kind of bumped into it and knocked everything over. Now, at least you have him not being the klutzy klutz that he should have been in that first issue. Now you have a hydraulic lift actually making the contents fall over on their own.
And it was so funny, and I don't know the intent originally, but when I went back, and, it's one of those, a lot of people, you would go and, hey, I want to see the origin, issue of Jay Garrick. So you go, and it almost plays out like that joke where he's there and he's going to light that cigarette, and you're like, oh, no, don't light it. There's the hardwood. It's going to blow up. And then it doesn't. And he's like, ooh. And then he leaves on and knocks everything on him. It's like, oh, you son of a bitch. You almost got through there.
And Jim, why wouldn't you want to go back and read Flash Comics #1? Because I'm pretty sure it's also the origin of Hawkman.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. And it gets so many things. And in this where, again, I know that you have problems with it changing some things. If you just have fun with this stuff.
I'm okay with changing. It's just that the idea, again, the idea that Barry Allen created the Speed Force and it rippled throughout time, giving Jay access to it at this point in time, he didn't create, he was the Flash essentially because Barry Allen, did this years later on Another Earth and all that stuff. A lot of people hate that. I don't necessarily love it either. It just seems like we're not doing Speed Force here and it's different. And that feels weird to me.
Like I said, I think it's a metagene that taps into the Speed Force, that makes you sensitive to the Speed Force. It's just a latent gene that the hardwood or vapors mixed with a cool, smoke ends up, activating those. When you have this, though, you have some things, more where you have Hughes. He's like, yeah, I got to get somebody. The first guy I went into was Edward Clarice or Clarisse. That is ending up being that's Rival, who ends up being the big arch nemesis of Jay Garrick. And that's just mentioned. I like that he throws these things in. And if you know that, it's cool. If you don't, it's still cool. You just, it adds to it. I haven't
seen Rival in a long time. That'd be cool to bring him back.
Yeah, and maybe that's a way to get that. Maybe we end up having the JSA Revenge. So we love the Revenge Squads there.
The Injustice
Rival
Society
is right in there. So with that, though, you also mention, Parsifal, Otto Frenz, the idea of the Nazi deal where he went off and he was getting. That's where they ran into him at that point. So it starts to
with
connect.
His Robert?
Yeah, we still it still doesn't really explain the Dr. Elemental thing completely, but
even
maybe
the
we'll see more of that.
When he gets funding by the ISA to do more of the stuff that he's been working on, he's building them weapons, but he's doing his own research as well into untapping, unlocking the metagene because he wants to be a Superman as well, but he's not being able to do this. Everybody except for Jay Garrick, it seems like, has failed him. Everybody keeps dying, although animals keep dying, and he pretty much, through his experimentations, I built some shit and now I got elemental powers, and I just have to assume it's all technology based, and that's as far as we take it. And even the idea, though, it's even the idea when Judy Garrick goes and disappears, even the idea when he's by her, I guess, I think they might have forgot about me too. I'm doesn't. I know. It's bothered me since the first issue. I was why would that be?
I don't know. I do like though where he's throwing just bodies into the bay. That's part of his daily routine. He just goes, he wraps them up and throws them in the bay.
They stink.
Again, what I do also like, though, is he's doing this and he's experimenting on Jay. It is a weird play that he just feels like, oh, I'm going to end up making the superhuman being, and then I'll get everybody's superpowers, but then Jay becomes so popular he gets jealous. But Jay has to sit there. If it wasn't for Hughes, obviously he wouldn't have, his abilities, but it also was, even before that, it was Joan. It was the idea that he got a lot of, he got a bit more guff. He got more confidence, is what I was trying to say.
That's the thing. It's right now.
And I like that.
He was kind of a scrub on the football field. He started doing stuff here, especially when he got a Speed Force bonus. If you go back to Flash Comics #1, he is just using the Speed Force on the field, just making every play himself to the point where, like I'm telling you, it becomes that basketball game in Flubber where everybody just has the jumping abilities. Or not Flubber, but the whatever the original one was. I can't think of the Absent-Minded Professor. When you have that going on, it's just like Joan wanted nothing to do with Jay Garrick until he was the man's man on the football field, and all of a sudden he's married with a kid, and all because of Dr. Elemental.
This makes it that Joan wasn't really a money-grubbing, gold digger. So it works all around for me. It fixes a lot of bad things. I do like, too, I'm telling you, I think it's well written. Some of the things, and when you bring up stuff about, oh, man, even when he sees Judy, she said, hey, Dad, oh, my goodness, she must be from the future. He really jumps to the conclusion that's right, but then they don't remember him. But I do like the way that this is played out, because when he does use the hydraulics and you end up all the chemicals, there's Hughes, and he's looking through that, one-way glass. He's like, yep. Gotta wait for a couple hours, let this shit percolate. It's so evil. And then he walks in to pretend, just like in the original. Oh my God, Jay. And it's so good. That's the sort of thing I really like.
But I like the second bit even more for when you have Jay in the hospital and the doctor comes to Professor Hughes to tell him what's been going on with the tests they're running. Unless the specialist from New York is crazy, your boy will be the fastest thing that ever walked on Earth. The elements of hard water will speed up a person's reflexes. The gas injects him like a vaccination. Science knows hard water makes a person act much quicker than you. Look, you have all this going through, and this is straight out of Flash Comics #1, and you just have the idea where you're getting the information for who Jay Garrick is in 1939. But then all of a sudden you get to the next panel where you didn't get to see it out, where Dr. Hughes or Professor Hughes just shoots that scientist in the face right there. I'm like, this adds to it. I love all the elements where we just keep adding little bits to the actual comic, re-representing the comic like this, because it's a great callback, and you're just adding more to the Professor Hughes character. It's just some of the explanations I don't like, but when you have this, it is so much fun, especially if you know Flash Comics #1.
Do you like the elements, or do you like the elementals, Eric? So you end up he could have a group called the Elementals. That'd be neat. You end up where, again, that stuff's really cool. Really cool. Though I realize now, I'm like, the fuck have we done with this hard water since? I mean, this shit is like the fucking youth.
Tell me more.
Please, get me that hard water. I need it right now.
I'm going to suck on some hard water right now.
Hard
it's
water
would
be some sort of stupid spritz thing with it's cranberry flavored and get you drunk, Eric. That's the hard water now. I don't like it. I'm allergic to hops. I do have some hard seltzer. I have hard seltzer right within reach. I could crack it open right now. Should I?
Why? I don't even know why you have it within reach.
Because I'll tell you why I have it within reach. When you ended up going on hiatus the week after, you don't listen to the shows. Eric, I got drunk as hell. I ended up getting a bunch of booze and I was straight, but I didn't finish.
Drank
I have
half a can?
Two. They're the hard seltzers, Eric. If you tilt your head well, actually, Eric, I had a daiquiri and also a sex on the beach. Is what I had Clue and cream, my friend. No, I ended up I was going to get beer. I'm like, yeah, I might try these hard seltzers. Sounds really tough. Hard seltzers.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
I didn't end up finishing them. And just that really proves the point of me really not drinking. It's like you have all of your, action figures. I have a hard seltzer within reach.
Yeah.
I could grab it. And I know that if I grab it as a joke, I was going to up it out. I won't drink it. Over. And then I'll hit the mic, but also I won't drink it. It'll be a waste. At some point, almost drank it on New Year's. Nope. Kept that baby aside. That's for a special occasion. That one. But yeah, you end up where the things like that with Dr. Elemental shoots it. That's cool. That's a cool thing of oh my God, that's what happened after. Or that's what happened in between. I really like that, the idea that he gets Joan because he's got more confidence. It's more like you said, he starts to be a little better on the football field because he's the most accurate of superheroes. If you start being able to run fast and do all that shit, you do it. You end up where at first you cheat, but you have to learn better. Well, what do you know better? He just wants to impress the ladies.
I did find it odd that they said that Alan Scott was out and about in 1938, though.
Yeah, that is weird. So I think that this is one of those where I had a lot of fun with it. When you start bringing up your nitpicking shit, then yeah, I start getting upset. But I did like, the whole
well thought out criticisms.
It's not nitpicking, but it's stuff that this to me is more based on fun. Like it's somewhat, it's almost like the supernatural versus science. This is fun versus continuity. And I think the fun wins out a lot with this book. I really do like it. And the funniest thing of it, a lot of people's complaints were not enough Judy. And then I thought but it is called Jay Garrick and we have more just. So
That's
I'm
right.
like, okay, we do need to see
I do prefer
this.
Judy, though.
Cool. I do too. But it's funny where you almost want more Judy, but it is a Jay Garrick deal. And like the Alan Scott, it's trying to get things in a different vein to get moving forward. If we do continue, this works out for me because it sets Judy and Jay up. It might go against some things and maybe seem wonky, but I did like it. And then
it's always weird to me too because other people in different comics and even animated stuff, I forget exactly where I see it all the time, but they talk about metahumans, right? And the metahuman gene. They say about the Flash all the time, like he's not a metahuman. He has access to the Speed Force. It's completely different. And that just feels like it's just falling back on all these things that always feel wrong to me.
And we talk about it a lot. Like that's when you hear that metahuman gene and the metagene, that it really does feel more like a Marvel thing overall anyway. But it works for me because of the way of she has to get those powers. And there you go, Eric.
No. Metagene, that's all DC. If you got that at Marvel, you're a goddamn mutant.
Well, you're a mutant, but it's more like they really center on that. So with latent stuff, I'm telling you, you didn't really go through a lot of the Inhuman stuff in the Terrigen Mist. That's all you heard of, is these latent genes and how they went. Yeah, so that became big there. But yeah, it's just, here we are.
We had bloodlines for that.
Yeah, at the end, you end up having, because they went to Star Labs, they went to the partner, and he ends up where he knows where
Dr.
Professor
Slate,
Hughes.
the creator of Star Labs.
Is he related to Mr. Slate from back in the day?
No,
right? And
not
then
from the Flintstones.
all I think of is Vandal Savage going down that Brontosaurus at the end of the day. Yabba dabba doing.
That was Fred Flintstone.
It was Vandal Savage in this here. But you end up where you have, Mr. Slate here.
Dr. Slate.
Yeah, he didn't go to Rock College for me to just say that. But he realizes that, oh my God, Hughes is bad. I want to kind of stop him. I think he's more of the idea of I want to be the only one controlling Star Labs, but he's about to tell them where they are.
Without him knowing it this entire time.
Yeah, well, that's true. And he says, hey, I know where they are. Let me delay it a second so that the secretary could come in.
With her Gatling gun arm.
Yeah, her Gatling gun arm that I can only think either was the Valdarian DNA or the Lazarus Rain, or she's just a damn robot. I don't know.
That's the thing. It's either she's a robot or it's just Mercy Graves pretending to be the secretary of Star Labs.
Graves, like she's
it
almost
really looks
there,
like her and her gun arms now.
It does look like her, doesn't it? But yeah, she comes in and Gatling guns up, and I see hitting behind, but it looks like maybe Slate might be done.
Oh yeah, you should really kill a Dr. Slate in this whole thing. It's like this.
Yeah, he's about to
I can give you his exact words. Mr. Slate, Professor Hughes called. He says you're fired.
Pretty good. That's a pretty good action scene, though. It's weird when she's like, Professor Hughes calls, because you even ended up having them come in at their hey, we want to see Hughes, we want to see Slate, but it's funny.
I'm telling you, the Gatling gun armed secretary still better than Robert.
Yeah, you see Robert at one point. I was going to point out he's in the lab back in the day. They're looking at
the ISA lab. Yeah.
Yep, he's there doing his deal. You don't like him? I kind of like him, Robert, but Gatling gun secretary.
Pierre Robert.
Well, Pierre Robert, a little shout out. She's got more of the action movie one-liners, so I do like Gatling gun secretary is what we'll call her from now on. But yeah, I understand that. I like the way he twists and turns some things in the past that don't really mean much, but are cool. Like how things happen. Yeah, the metagene, maybe it didn't have to say, he could have just said, I did the experiments, it hit him, and he ended up in them with Judy saying, I think maybe the same thing might happen. But I think that caught him of the idea of, then people argue, why would it happen with her? And he has to get that way.
I don't know. The only thing, the reason I like this, because we have to have a reason for Dr. Elemental to do anything, and he's obsessed with the idea of the metahuman gene and him unlocking it in people, and he needs to unlock it in Jay Garrick and Judy Garrick in this, and hopefully himself, and replicate it. So that's the only reason it's here, because we need a reason for Dr. Elemental to be who he is, and it has to be along the lines of him getting powers as well, which it still doesn't have to be because he's still doing stuff that would access to the Speed Force.
Yeah, there he is, Dr. Elemental. He's got like a glasses that the one glass looks red at that one point and the other's clear.
Those are called 3D glasses.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. He's like, I better get this done quick. I got to go watch Jaws 3D. He's off to do it.
Nobody ever said that.
That is true. That is very, very true. But what would you give this?
I'll give this a 6.5 out of 10 because it is a lot of fun. I love the idea of mix matching like the original Flash comics number 1 with this, adding new details and stuff you've never seen before to make this story work. It's just a lot of the other stuff in the details of how we're doing stuff with Jay Garrick, Dr. Elemental disappearing, Judy Garrick, and like just the stuff that I've talked about throughout this. It really just kind of bums me out with the way it's being played out, but I still had fun with this issue overall.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I know, like I said, there's some things that might not, but I'm giving it an 8. That's how much I had fun. And all of my fun was, oh man, I read, Flash, the first Flash. I read the origin, and there's some cool plays of, okay, that kind of makes sense. Oh, that's
neat.
Good. And I love that part of it. And that's kind of what I want for this in general. We said that the big thing that this has going against the other two, Alan Scott and the Sandman one, is that you do have some present day stuff. This is kind of an aside. We'll get back to that stuff coming up. Obviously, we have Gatling Gun Secretary, yelling catchphrases and stuff, and I think that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go 8, way higher than you.
Weird science
is the revolution.